Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar today. We have some great presentations. We have Jen Winter, the Managing Director of our Technology Vertical, and Lisa Schlichting, who is our PK's Technology Vertical Client Partner and Customer Solution Leader. Among other things, they're going to be sharing their views on best-in-class digital customer engagement and proven tactics for interactive digital engagements, which has become even more important now that we are in the midst of a pandemic. Before we get started, I do want to remind everyone that all attendees will have been muted, and if you have any questions throughout the whole presentation, please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom app, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. I'm going to now hand things over to Lisa, and we'll get things started.
Thanks, Linda. Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us today. My name is Lisa Schlichting. As Linda mentioned, I am a client partner for our technology vertical and a CX solution leader. I've spent the last 15 to 20 years really helping Fortune 500 high-tech companies understand their customer better to achieve business outcomes, accelerated revenue from customer satisfaction, customer acquisition, and things like that. Jen?
Great, thanks Lisa. I'm Jen Winter and I lead our technology and software vertical, all up for PK. And I wanted to just give people a little bit more background on PK. We are a digital engineering firm that focuses on Fortune 1000 companies in North America, but with a global delivery team. So we, as Lisa mentioned, are really focused on helping clients accelerate the delivery of really differentiated customer, employee, and partner experiences through a host of integrated digital services. And we're excited to share with you today what we've been up to. So I'll turn it back over to Lisa and she'll go into a little bit more detail about that.
Great, thanks. So how we want to spend our time today, we'll talk a few minutes about what it's like to sell today in the landscape and some factors that are really affecting the seller landscape today, and then walk through the future of where it could go and how sellers fit into the customer experience and how companies can really help sellers accelerate that. And then move into some best-in-class examples that I think everybody probably is excited to get to. And then we'll spend a couple minutes going through QA. I'm excited, this is the kickoff for a webinar series for us. So stay tuned for additional topics that will go a bit deeper into the topics we cover today. Really here, we will be introducing some concepts and then follow up a bit deeper later. So as we get started, would love to do a poll to see how you all are experiencing selling in today's environment. So what does it feel like to sell in today's environment, and all sorts of options to choose from. All right, so we did this exercise as well. Linda, are we going to be showing real-time examples? Yes, okay, if you guys can see. So we have a couple of series of bad online dates and Zoom call parodies from SNL. Unfortunately, nobody is selling 4x their quota, so hopefully you guys will have some takeaways today. This is pretty in line with what we found as well. Prior to this, we also spoke to a couple sellers and got some quotes here around the challenge of selling in today's environment. And really from our perspective, there are, a few different factors that shape the landscape today. You'll notice here, a lot of these are, not new they are maybe fairly obvious, but really kind of taken in concert are really affecting, the ability for customers to be satisfied and convert, and for sellers to provide value. As you all know, decision makers and customers have access to real-time data and digital data and digital information now more than ever. And so they're really taking that front end of the sales cycle on their own, and really aren't looking for help from a salesperson. We do a lot of research with decision makers, and really across the board, customers' journeys really start with their peers and with industry reporting. And so they take that kind of 100 level piece of education on their own. And so it becomes more important than ever for sellers to really add value to customers as they're going through the experience, as opposed to kind of replicating, things that they can learn on their own. Experience, the expectation of good customer experience is also, there are high expectations. We did some research for a Fortune 500 high-tech company, and we found that almost 60% of customers have chosen competitive products just due to customer experience. And a lot of this is driven from the B2C world. And a lot of the experiences and seamless B2C experiences that exist, really there's an expectation now in the commercial suit that purchase process follows suit. And on the seller side, there are things that both make sellers more productive, all sorts of tools now and technologies, but it can also be overwhelming if not used in concert with one another in a way that makes sense for the customer experience. And there's also a proliferation of data. If you are calling in today from a Fortune 500 company or a mid-sized company, you probably very much have multiple data sources that you're trying to understand insights from and get data from. And it's harder than ever to, unless you have kind of some tight hypotheses, to pull insights from that data. And so that's making the seller activity and seller experience very complex. And, like everybody knows, millennials are now moving into decision-making roles, social media and integrated customer experience, and the expectation that customers, that customers have, that all of the activity that they have taken with your company. If they've contacted you through Facebook, they expect that, if they have an interaction on LinkedIn or in another channel, that you understand and know that. And so social selling really has, become the expectation and the rule. So what does that look like, kind of understand? Oh, and then of course, wrapped around all of this is the fact that, we're selling in a pandemic, where customers are, going 30 minutes back all day long. They're teaching their kids in between meetings, and their proclivity for getting on a Teams or a Zoom call to kind of just hear a presentation, that's really tough. And so this concept around providing proprietary value or proprietary IP to help a customer in some way is really, really important in getting around and even just getting attention from a customer. Jen is going to talk about this a bit more later, but there are opportunities to take a look at your best practices across, all of your different customers, your internal proprietary knowledge, and really it's about providing value back to your customers or your prospects, helping them do their job better, using best practices to help them provide, increase their company performance around increased revenue or reduction in costs. Really, it's about how can you take some proprietary knowledge and provide value to get around this, 30-minute Zoom meeting. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So what does the future look like, and how could it look? Taking these factors into consideration. And this is a quote, by an analyst at Forrester that we really like, and is kind of an underpinning for how we like to, at PK, to think about, a really tightly integrated customer experience integrated with seller activity. And the quote here is, our job is no longer to convince the buyer to buy, it's to help the buyer to buy. You know, and a part of that is customers have an expectation now that the experience is interactive, it's transparent, that it addresses their specific vertical pain point or the scenario that they are trying to address, even if it's very, very narrow. And so there is an expectation of a personalized selling process. And really, you know, the seller activities should bump up against all of the barrier points through the customer journey. And the beginning point there is having a deep understanding of the entire experience from post-sale to conversion to, or sorry, from pre-sales to conversion to post-sale, around how customers go through that journey and where they experience the pain points. You know, we do an exercise that we like to call broken flows, or, you know, people call it all sorts of things, but it's really kind of going through a B2B purchase process across all of the channels that they use. As you know, a B2B purchase process is complex with a lot of players. And we like to go through every single one of those and really identify where the barriers are and, you know, what sellers and companies can do to enable sellers to accelerate customers through each of those barriers. And the seller activity really should be designed around accelerating customers through each of those pain points so that they can help one another and have a really tightly integrated experience. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jen. Jen is going to talk through, you know, now that we've kind of laid out this tightly integrated concept, you know, what can sellers be doing from an activity level to enable really a tightly integrated sales process, and then what companies can do to help their sellers with that. And then obviously we'll walk through some good examples as well. Jen?
Thanks, Lisa. All right, so I'm going to reinforce a few things that Lisa mentioned. We always like to start, obviously, with the target audience that we're trying to meet the needs of. So let's start with a focus on what have we learned from a B2B decision maker perspective that really we carry forward with us when we look to improve seller experience. So first one, Lisa mentioned this, is a focus really on transparent, open, and self-serve experiences that help customers with discovery and solution fit. So it's no surprise, I know, to many of us on the phone that a lot of this expectation has been inspired by easy and innovative B2C experiences. But when you translate that to B2B, it really does set a new standard. And at a minimum, customers do want easy ways to get information themselves. Pricing, actually some experience with the solution or product, and what others might say about it. So we definitely carry that forward. Second quick thing is customers that have done business with you want to be known by anyone and everyone in the organization. And they want to feel like they've got a partner, as Lisa mentioned, really someone that's helping them through an experience and is trusted. So that means that just brings a new level of knowledge expectation to whoever's interacting with the customer. Whether they did business 2 years ago or 2 minutes ago, they do expect that you know them. Third quick thing is when customers are engaging with someone in sales, because they expect that self-service environment, they want that interaction to be deeper and more valuable than what they can get on their own. And last thing from a customer's perspective is Lisa just talked about friction points, and there's probably no greater friction point than trial and purchase that is both frustrating from a customer's perspective and a seller's perspective alike. So that's another area that we like to hone in on when we go about working with organizations to help them on seller experience. So if that's what customers are looking for, let's take a quick pivot over to what sellers might be looking for. So we're going to flip to examples because that's really the best way to bring these to light. But before we do that, I just wanted to paint a quick bigger picture. And the bottom line is this, that B2B seller experience needs transformation too. In addition to what's already available in a new modern sales technology stack, there's a lot of other things that they need to be effective in addressing these customer expectations. So one quick thing that we'll start with is account intelligence. Gone are the days of the manual toil to collect scads and scads of account information and individual information and manually type that into your CRM system. Today, it's much easier to get intelligence served up to your sellers that allows them to be much more targeted in their engagement. And things that are very difficult actually for sellers to get without this assistance. Business priorities, spend areas. We have a great example for that we'll go into in a minute. But there's 3 other big components that are really things that we embed into the work that we do with our clients that aren't available really in a packaged technology. One is real-time intelligence, and Lisa touched on that as well. So the ability to aggregate purchase and engagement information that helps sellers identify buying patterns and be alerted to different activities is really important for sellers to tailor their engagement with customers. Reimagining what interactive touch points can be delivered at scale is the other thing that's important for us to do to help sellers. And lastly, and Lisa touched on this as well, personalizing the experience from an industry and job role perspective is also important to help sellers with. So those are the platforms or the principles that we bring forward into the work that we do to build these different sales experiences. And so I'm going to pivot to a few real world examples to help bring this to light a little bit better. All right, so I mentioned just a minute ago about helping your sellers get a leg up when it comes to intelligence. And if your sellers are manually collecting this information today, they're already behind the curve. So we have 2 favorites we wanted to highlight. Crystal Knows is an AI tool that leverages publicly available internet social media profiles that generates really deep insights about an individual, a person's communication and engagement preferences. And they integrate it with LinkedIn. So the experience feels like looking someone up on LinkedIn, and you can go get additional insights off that LinkedIn feed from Crystal AI. I use this myself. I have to tell you, I found it on myself to be about 85% accurate. And so far, I think it is pretty accurate and definitely informative because it gives you tips depending on what type of experience you're going to be having with someone, preparing for an introduction conversation, recruiting conversation, a sales conversation. It gives you kind of targeted insights around how to engage that person effectively. Second thing, and more on an account perspective, less on an individual, but Drop similarly uses AI and big data to aggregate information across thousands of data points about organizations. And it makes the process of understanding an organization's org chart, priorities, focus areas, spend, different vendor and platform usage super easy. And that is information that actually takes a lot of time to get if you're doing that manually. So those are a couple of really key, just a couple examples of purchase intelligence that you can help sellers get a leg up on, that we always recommend when we're working with clients. All right, so we've got a quick poll that we're going to tee up. So we wanted to know how much time people on your sales team spend collecting and organizing intelligence. So less than an hour a week probably means you've got some help for them. 1 to 5 hours a week, they might have some help or they're not spending enough time. And if they're doing more than 5 hours a week, they're probably struggling to keep up with the amount of information that needs to be captured. So we'd love to know your thoughts on that. All right, great. Well, I think it looks like people are working hard to get the right amount of information. And so I definitely would encourage anybody that hasn't experimented with some of these tools to see what your sellers think in terms of how helpful it is to guide their behavior. All right, we're gonna switch gears. So as much as I am a fan of accelerated intelligence, I'm an even bigger fan of really helping sellers reinvent engagement through some digital touch points. So we're going to start with a few examples here. A table stakes example first. So at a bare minimum from organizations that are selling in a B2B organization, we think it's really important to have some sort of interactive experience that captures the value of the solution once it's in place. So ServiceNow we picked as an example because it really represents, I think, a lot of the key underpinnings of a really successful ROI calculator. And we have many different things that we do, which is kind of at the bottom. We'll talk about a few of those, but we're going to highlight the calculator first. So first thing about the ServiceNow calculator, really anyone that's compelling, is that there's a third party that's actually done the work to validate from an independent perspective what the value of a solution is. So that can be IDC, Forrester, an analyst group, or a consulting organization, but some third party that says this is what the opportunity is by leveraging this solution. It then takes what is typically a pretty complex calculation, but represents it interactively in a really simple way with as few questions as possible. Also, the best ones will ingest any information it knows about the customer if it's an opt-in experience, so that people don't have to repeat information the organization already knows. And then it comes back with an interactive way to understand the value and do some exploration around what drives that impact. But it also makes that available as a download, which makes it really easy for customers to embed that into any process that's important to them to be able to sell that solution in internally. From there, we've done a whole lot of work to evolve the sophistication of these kinds of experiences to help answer questions buyers have in addition to just the ROI calculation. So sometimes they want to see hard and soft benefits split out. We've done ones where we bring in competitor cost information, so you can actually look at what does it look like to switch from my current solution to this solution in terms of cost savings. And it can also get more tailored based on size or industry. So these are really great and important conversations to equip the sellers to have in an interactive way that is very specific to a customer. All right, continuing on this path, we're going to go to another kind of experience, which is a little bit further potentially up in a conversation. So every B2B organization out there right now is a really good time to reinvent moments of truth in the sales cycle or post-sales cycle that can be delivered in a digital interactive way. So we've built these types of experiences for all the circles on this slide, but we wanted to highlight one that we built for Microsoft. And that is an interactive assessment that helps direct and indirect sellers identify specific workplace and security solutions for customers or prospects. That experience was built based on the knowledge and experience of a really small set of world-class solution sellers, and took that conversation and IP and put it into an interactive experience so that it scales across thousands of sellers, both direct and indirect. So the benefit of this is it allows the seller to facilitate a really consultative conversation, more than what a customer's had by consuming information online, about all that customer specific needs. It streamlines the specific requirements that a customer has, and it provides the seller with supporting assets to help accelerate the conversation past this initial assessment. In addition, the customer gets on the other side, again, information that they can use if they're passionate about the solution to sell it internally on their own side. And most importantly, because we like to build these as applications, not just a web experience, but an actual application that retains what's done, it enables Microsoft in this case, but any customer to be able to connect sales activity to sales outcome, which is a little bit of nirvana in the sales space. Sellers love it because it really gets them to have a high value conversation really specific to the customer's environment and need. And it might be more fun than actually doing a Zoom or a Teams presentation. All right, but we have more examples. Let's keep going. All right, Salesforce. We love this one because we also think that this is an opportunity in the post-sales side of a customer experience. And Salesforce's Trailhead program is really effective at engaging community at scale and helping Salesforce show up, not just to make sure people understand their product, but also helping people in their careers as a seller. And it puts customer success in the center of their relationship and really blurs the line between sales and customer success. So this solution, probably many people are familiar with Salesforce, maybe not so much with Trailhead, but it's all online and it's 100% free to Salesforce account holders. It does make learning Salesforce's capabilities accessible to anybody, and that includes people that might not be Salesforce customers yet. And if you are a Salesforce customer, it really allows the ability to accelerate onboarding and adoption even during the sales process so people can get up to speed and ready. But bottom line, this post-purchase experience is really amazing at cultivating kind of recognition and affinity for the solution. And that's powerful because in the end of the day, from a SaaS product perspective, people using the product and wanting to know more about it and making it have an impact is really hard to scale across thousands of people, and Trailhead does that really well. All right, one last example to share with you comes from one of my favorites, actually, is Aero Electronics. So I feel like what Aero has really done here has set out to reinvent the value and the speed of a trial experience converting to a sales experience. So their test drive service, and Aero, for those of you that might not be familiar, is an electronics company, has over 80 million SKUs for people that design and build any hardware that has electronics in it. So what it allows customers to do is test drive a service that lets them borrow their development tools for a month, their design development tools for hardware. So customers can get in, answer design questions, play with different components and trade-offs with cost and performance, and do that all in a testing environment. And once they convert to a customer, seamlessly then allows them to do all of their bill of materials development, project by project, and connects through APIs with procurement. So they get real-time inventory, pricing, and the ability to order, and then track supply chain and be alerted to any sort of supply chain issues. So really compelling example of taking what it was a frustrating experience for customers from a design to build perspective and really working to make that friction-free. In addition, this is something sellers can do or customers can do on their own, but sellers can drop in at any point to see where customers are and offer to help them. So it's an experience that lives both internally and externally. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa.
Thanks. So we just have a minute left. Definitely looking to hopefully answer a couple of questions. I see a couple of questions have come through. We'll leave you here. There are things that you can do kind of depending on where you are in your maturity of the things that we've spoken about today. First and foremost, really it's about gathering the customer intelligence, whether it's through purchase or through your own data. If that's something that isn't, in a place that is mature or you're spending a lot of time or not spending enough time, it's really around getting intelligence around the people you're selling to, the accounts that you're selling to, and the customer experience. And from there, really creating, Jen talked through a number of examples of some interactive experiences that companies are doing, and really understand how you can build in an interactive touch point to help accelerate customers through barriers or provide them with some unique value. And then from there, it's really about integrating, those two things that we spoke about and that are here, which is really integrating the customer experience with the seller activity in a tight way. And that could also mean like highly personalized or highly industry specific solutions. It can mean, all sorts of things depending on your company. And so from there, do we have time? Just looking at the clock, it looks like we have time for, maybe one or two questions.
Sure. Hey, my name is Brooke Boers. I'm going to channel Barbara Walters here and handle some of the questions for Lisa and Jen. So let's see here. I like this one. This is a good one for Lisa. Someone was asking about how you actually find the right moments to optimize. Like, what are the moments that matter? How do you identify what you might build an interactive touch point for with your customers?
Great question. We talked a bit about this in Fits and Starts today, but first and foremost, it's really understanding every touch point or every step that your potential prospect or customer goes through and all of the decision-making points throughout, and then mapping that to both, what's happening in the industry at large and where the pain points are. And you always want to start with those pain points. And you can get that intel from all sorts of ways. Obviously you can speak with your customers a bunch. You can sit in on, customer calls. You can actually sit at the client site or the customer site. You can also leverage a lot of data that you may have internally. If you're a SaaS product, you have a ton of telemetry data that you can do analysis on in terms of, behavior and what, clicks within products and how that drives behavior. So there are all sorts of ways to kind of find the data for where you want to start, but you really want to start in the places that are the biggest barrier to getting customers to the next level.
That's really helpful. So thinking about where's the most friction in that experience, and where do you really have an opportunity to not just meet customer expectations, but exceed them. I like that. Thank you. This one's good for Jen, based on your years in transformation and selling organizations. This person is asking about their specific transformation. They're moving from more of a solution sales motion into a consultative, or I could maybe even use the word value-based selling. And they're struggling a bit, and they're wondering if you have any tips for them.
Yeah, I think we touched on one as an example from a Microsoft perspective, and that was very specifically to guide a solution conversation from sellers, and we just put that into an interactive app. But there's also within the sales technology stack, whether you're using Dynamics or Salesforce, some guided selling. And really what you're trying to do is democratize or kind of systematize the conversation that you want sellers to have. We're particular fans of kind of building those guided selling mini apps. A, because it's interactive and it's a different type of experience, and B, because the customer actually gets some assets at the end that they can use. And I think that's a really great way to start, especially because what we're finding right now is sellers are liking things that give them an ability to do something different with customers. And I think that that's a great place to start.
I like that, because it serves dual benefit, right? Both benefit to the customer as well as to the seller trying to facilitate that conversation. Very cool. I have one more question. Why don't we just ask this? Whoever jumps in first can answer it. Any examples that you didn't share in the webinar today that you think would be a really compelling interactive touch point with customers?
Well, I can share. I'll share one kind of aspirational concept that we just talked to actually Aero about, their CMO, and what the conversation led to was perhaps maybe what will end up happening in this B2B space is it will jump from kind of these interactive experiences really to more of a virtual reality experience, because being able to understand and get into how something works is actually a really great analogy for those experiences. So as that technology maybe gets a little bit easier, you can imagine dropping someone into a virtual reality experience that takes the place of having to configure and set up a demo experience, or allows them to actually see what something looks like when it runs. I thought that was since I like to think of Aero as really kind of pushing the bounds of what interaction can look like, I thought that was an interesting concept. Not so accessible today, but maybe in the future.
Yeah, and I would, take that. I love that idea, and take that, the personalization piece of that. So whether that be a personalized demo or a personalized VR or AR, a mechanism by which sellers can produce highly personable or personalized demo or trial experiences that really address very specific verticalized pain points. And that's another place where we're seeing a bit of innovation happening just at the beginning, where you create a short demo for an HR director in healthcare, for example, and really bring to life what that scenario is going to look like should they have the product. And then, put them into a trial experience from there. And, companies for all of time have struggled with content development, where industry intersects with role, because it's just really a proliferation of content. And I like that it kind of shortcuts to, the demo and trial that is highly personalized, and you're not dealing with all sorts of decks and assets and things like that, both from the content production side on the company, and and then consuming all the content from a seller standpoint.
Well, first of all, I can't wait to see an AR VR sales experience, but also totally agree, Lisa, with your point on demo content being tailored. Being on the receiving end of demos that are tailored to my specific needs is always much more powerful. I think we can go ahead and close out the webinar. Thanks for everyone for submitting questions. Great questions.
Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.